Live from the Export Beer Garden Studio and brought to you as always by Export Ultra, the beer for here. This is the Agenda Podcast for Thursday the 23rd of Jan.
The Agenda Podcast, the home of sporting nonsense and claptrap. Brought to you by Export Ultra.
Now the Karaka Millions is on this weekend, so we thought who better to bring in than Luke Kemeys from the BGP. Good morning, Luke. How's it going, mate?
Good, mate. Good. Starting to get a little bit excited and both nervous as well, but good to be here.
Yes, so we'll get into the fields, the draws, tips and all that kind of thing very shortly. But so for people that don't understand how the Punters Club works, which I think most of our audience do, how does it work?
Yeah, so you put your money in basically at a high level, and it can be $1 through to whatever you like.
Yeah.
And it all gets pulled together, and that becomes the pot. And then we start with the pot, and we bet on behalf of everybody.
Yes.
And then hopefully we win, and then you get your percentage of that. So say we start with 200 grand, and you've put $10 in, and we end up with 400,000. Then your 10 becomes 20.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is such a great. I got to be honest. It's a service for people, because I think a lot of people, they don't follow racing, but once or twice a year they want to go along or be involved and, you know, have themselves a good day, but they don't know any of the horses. They're picking on vibe, favourite number, prettiest girl leading it around the birdcage, whatever it is. So this is such a way better way of getting involved without, because the other part of it is if you're trying to follow along someone's tips and then you fuck it up in the app and you put the wrong thing in, or the field closes before you can do it. This is just a one-stop shop for just put your money in here, follow along, and it's good entertainment. You guys get massive pots for this as well. What was one of them? I mean, I don't want to get it wrong, but what was the biggest pot you've had?
Yeah, 1.1 million last year. It was crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was all last year was, I guess, a bit of an outlier and pretty crazy because we had the return to Ellerslie.
Yes.
So people, I think, were fired up for racing. And we had a $50,000 bet nice and early on a futures bet. So basically that means the horse hasn't even been guaranteed to start in the race, and it needed to win a race to get into the Karaka Millions. And it won that race, which then put it into the Karaka Millions. But we had a bet before it even had won that first race.
I remember this. That was the first race of the day, was it? Or early doors?
A bit later in the day, the 2-year-old race. Yeah, so we had 50 grand at 21. So we were up to win $1 million. And that built like a lot of hype, and that kind of led in for the 4 weeks. So people sort of going, right, I'm going to get involved and be a part of this. But we haven't had any of those sort of big bets prior yet, so that the fizz isn't quite as high this year. But I'm sure we'll still have a good bank come Saturday.
Yeah, 100%. So how do people, if they want to join this, how do you get into the pool?
Yeah, so historically it's probably been simpler is how I'd say it. So you could just go to the tab and ask, and they would, you could buy a voucher, you could go on the website, you could go on your mobile, and basically it was very easy. But now it's a little bit trickier, which isn't ideal. However, the only way you can get involved is via the TAB app. So you have to go to the TAB app on your phone or your iPad or on your device, and then go to More down the bottom right corner, and you'll see a group which is Boys Get Paid. So you should see the logo, and then in there is a way to join. So you join that, and then there's a pot, which is another tab, and so then you go and transfer money from your tab account into the pot. Okay. So as I start stepping through that, like, it sounds really hard, but actually when you go, you can find your way pretty simply.
If you know your way around the TAB app, it doesn't sound too much like hard work. So
one tip would be, though, is once you're in this group, then it defaults to having all these notifications on, and there are around 2,000 people in there just making a racket, being like, any tips today? What are you backing here? And so then you're getting a notification being like, holy, I don't need this on the work front.
Mute the group chat.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Punishing, mute the group chat. Okay, so look, if you know your way around the TAB app, get on the page. Bottom right hand corner is where the More thing is. Just follow that until you get into the BGP, and then you can just decide how much you want to chuck in there.
Yeah, and we've got in our app, so the BGP app, if you don't have that, or if you do, I mean, it's simple to download, and you can delete it after this weekend if you don't want it, but we've got sort of laid out instructions with a video on how to enter as well.
Yeah, okay, that will make it a little bit easier. People can still go along. It's at Ellerslie, right?
Yeah, so Ellerslie on Saturday, we've got our own area, and tickets are $150.
Yeah.
And that includes 4 beers. We have 2 of them sponsored by 2 of the trainers, Tiako and Stephen Marsh, which is pretty cool. And then a meal as well. And I think GA these days is $50. So our ticket at $150 is pretty unreal value.
Yes, I was in there last year. The feed was outstanding. And it was so good that actually our Prime Minister, Christopher Luxon, or Lee Hart, we still can't figure out which one it was. They came in.
Yeah, well, I believe Lee was pretty busy last weekend, but I think he might be popping back up again this weekend, hopefully.
Yeah. No, it was a good time. I thoroughly enjoyed going out there. And the after party as well was sick. Everyone's really into their work by the time the last race is finished, eh?
Big time. Well, the first race is at 4:28. So, we have a bit of a catch-up at a bar prior, and that starts at 12:30. So by the time people are there for race one, then they've got to get through 6 races as well. Then into an after party, which can be a big old go.
Yeah, it's a great day at the races. Are you looking at anything early doors? Actually, before we get into your tips, I'm still a little confused as to how the whole thing works. So it's the Karaka Millions. That means that all horses that are racing there were sold at the same sales? Is that how that works?
Yeah, basically, mate. So there's a big sale that starts. It's kind of actually starting at the moment, and then the bidding and the purchasing starts on Sunday. So basically, people go and buy horses from the Karaka sales down at Karaka, and then those horses then go on to race in the following years, and they qualify to race, and they race on the Karaka Millions night, and that's the biggest night with the biggest pots of cash that they can win. We do have other big race days as well, but basically you had to have come through those sales to qualify for the majority of these races.
You still obviously had to be a quick horse as well.
Yes. Yeah. But you couldn't buy a horse from Australia, for instance, and then race it in New Zealand and be the fastest and then come to some of these races, because you have to have come through the Karaka sales. So it's kind of a way to support those people who support the New Zealand thoroughbred sales here.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool concept.
So was that the idea, was that we want to reward people for supporting our local sales and that kind of thing, and then it just happened to become one of the... Is this the richest race in the country?
Well, they're building another massively rich race in March called the Kiwi. Yeah, so that is, I think there might even be $4.5 million worth of prize money, but it'll be the first year that it's been run this year. But yeah, the idea was that, you can go out to the sales and you could buy a 2-year-old while yearling, and then, so it's kind of before they become a two-year-old, then they turn 2, and you could then race in this Karaka Millions 2-year-old race. You could the next year be running for $1 million.
And I presume then that the best horses are sold through there.
Yeah, we and even like a lot of Australians come over here and they'll buy our horses, and they won't target these races. They'll just take them back to Australia. But the odd trainer will actually go, you know what, like we'll bring it back for this race.
Yes.
Yeah.
We'll get into whether anyone has and who the favourites are very shortly. But before we do that, the different races. So obviously they all have to come from Karaka. Then they have to qualify. And I believe there's a 2, 3 and 4-year-old race. How that works?
Yeah, so $1 million up for the 2-year-olds, 1.5 for the 3-year-olds, and $1 million for the 4-year-olds.
Jesus
Christ. Yeah, it used to just be 2-year-olds, and they've continued to build on it. So, now you're kind of, that's, people were sort of buying a horse and hoping it could win as a 2-year-old. If it didn't, well, then, hard luck. But now you've got the chances of a 3-year-old and a 4-year-old as well.
That's a good point. Yeah, what do you do with it if they're not running the 3s and 4s?
Yeah, you're knocking around for lesser prize money.
Yeah. So the barrier draw was yesterday, so we now know where all the horses are going to line up. So you've got a clearer picture, I presume, in your mind of where you want to go. Should we go through? Are they the biggest races, 2, 3 and 4-year-olds?
Yeah, basically. Then we do have a Group 1 railway, so it's basically like Group 1 is the highest calibre of racing, and that's a sprint race, and always very hard to find the winner of a sprint Group 1. Yeah.
So let's go through the 2s, 3s and 4s. Is there anything, first of all, was there anything you had your eye on, and second of all, did the barrier draw change anything?
Yeah, it was interesting. The a horse called Too Sweet in the 2-year-old race, so that is race 4.
Yeah.
It's true barrier 15, so it'll probably start in the outside barrier. You've got to be pretty good as a 2-year-old to win from that far out.
Yeah.
But the bookies opened it at $6, and it was crunched straight into $4.60. So there's enough money to move the market to suggest that the connections do not care that it's drawn out that far and that it could be very good. So that might be something to keep an eye on. It can run like hard and straight, and that's what you want to see as a 2-year-old as well, because they're still learning.
Yeah.
So you want to be able to see that they can take the corner, stick to the rail, and just gun it. This horse is going to then end up sort of being out a little bit.
Yes.
So it might get trapped out a little bit, have to go over a bit further ground. But by the seams, the early money is flying into that. But one thing that people want to be mindful of is that we've got a lot of Aussie jockeys coming over, and so the Aussies, they probably won't care about this until Saturday. And then when they're climbing into their Saturday race day, they'll chuck on the New Zealand racing and be like, oh, okay, it's this Millions, like we've heard about this over there now.
The punters, you mean?
Yeah, and they'll be like, I'm having a crack at Blake Shin, because it's Tiakau. They know about that over there. They know about Blake Shin. He's an Aussie jockey. It's won 2 from 2 starts. And that's a sort of horse that they'll just go, well, that's $3.30. That should be $2 something, bang. And they'll just crack it. And the flow of money in the last half hour before some of these races will be insane to watch.
So the movers watch for that fluctuation late, right before the jump.
Yeah. And I guess that's where you see the power of money and where it's going. But yeah, those are sort of 2 horses. The 2 favourites, so Too Sweet, has had some early money. And then Blake Shin's horse, To Bravery Born, which has won 2 from 2 starts. Looks a very good horse, but I would imagine that the money will come for that later on as the Aussies start to climb on.
So if you like the look of it, go early.
Yeah.
Because it's probably going to get pushed in a little bit more.
Yeah. One that's smoky in here that I don't mind if they get a scratching. So there's 14 start.
Yeah.
But then they always have 1 extra just in case a scratching happens and someone's not going like, oh, we qualified, but we missed out.
Yeah.
So there's a horse called Dare to Persuade, and that is $10s and $2.90. However, it needs a horse to scratch in the race for it to get a start. It was a pretty good run last start, and I think that could be the little smoky.
So it's the reserve.
Yeah, it's the reserve. Yeah, off the bench.
Wouldn't you want a little bit more for a reserve because there's a chance he's not going to get a run?
Yeah, well, if it doesn't run, you still get your money back.
Okay.
Yeah. So I don't know. I'd be very unlucky for one of these horses to scratch, but it can happen because they're younger. They're still feeling their shins. They might stand on a stone, get a stone bruise. Like anything can happen, and all of a sudden you go from charging into a big race day to like, sheesh, my horse isn't even running anymore.
Yeah, they might see a bird.
Yeah, you just don't know.
So, how can it be such short odds despite being the
emergency?
Yeah,
the bookies obviously don't mind it as well.
Yeah,
and they'll still set the market as if like it's getting into the market.
Okay.
Yeah.
Course,
So if it doesn't start, then you get refunded.
They're going to cover themselves.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving on to the 3-year-olds.
Yep.
I think was the 3-year-olds where there was a prohibitive favourite there, or am I?
You might be. There was a horse called Damask Rose that was often talked about.
Yeah.
And that has come up as a $4 shot. There's a horse that's sort of
Is that because it's drawn a really wide barrier?
I think it ran 3rd in the Karaka Millions last year. But yeah, it's drawn out in barrier 12. It's again like Blake Shin on for Tiakau. He's kind of got the pick of the rides for Tiakau, and that's sort of one of our powerhouse stables. But yeah, it's drifted out a little bit. That means that there's not much money for it. So it's $3.60 out to $4.20, back into $4.
Yep.
Again, that's the sort of horse that'll probably end up taking a bit of money once the Aussies tune in. But yeah, I think this horse actually was on the ballot, was the emergency last year in the 2-year-old race, and flew home and might have run 2nd, or it might have been 3rd, I think.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. But in this race, it's pretty open. The money has come for a horse called Dealt With that has won its last 2 starts, and the stable know how to win these races. They've won the 3-year-old a couple of times, and they're very astute with the horses that they place in races. And the money suggests that $8 was over the odds. There's a horse in here called Yordi at the top of the book.
Yes.
It's number 1. That has had a bit of spruiking, and Andrew Forsman has a pretty good record with Karaka Millions type races as well. That's drawn out in barrier 10, which is a bit niggly, but a lot of people expect it to go forward, and then they'll have to try and run it down. So you might like that at $6.50 if you want something a bit extra. And we're expecting maybe a little bit of moisture around the 09 in the coming days as well. So that horse can get through a slow track. Alizé's new track, they really like, they ping off of it because it's a different type of turf.
Right.
And
it's like a half AstroTurf sort of thing?
Effectively, yeah, probably an easy way for people to understand it. So it's not just like a paddock, which they turn into a race. Like it's built for racing, and so they can do a lot of racing on it. The grass grows really fast; they have to cut it down all the time. But it means a lot of water can go through it. So even if we got heaps of rain, like it won't end up being a bog because it drains out really quickly.
Yeah, right.
So this is only the 2nd year that we've had the Karaka Millions there. So people are still sort of learning how the track's playing and whatnot. But yeah, Yordi could be something for those that like a little bit rougher.
Yeah. And so that's the 3-year-olds. And then, did you say there was a 4-year-olds race, or are we straight into the railway after that?
Yeah, so that's the 4-year-olds back in race 2. I don't know why they have the 4-year-old first, but anyway, they're
a bit older. They can't stay up all night.
Exactly, yeah. So this, I actually checked in with the trainer before jumping on because we don't mind a horse called Bourbon Empress in here, but it's drawn barrier 12. He said he expects the horse to give this a big shake. It's $4.50 into $4. I think that's a pretty good bet. However, we've got Orchestral in there who won the 3-year-old $1 million race last year.
Well, I was going to say I've heard of this.
Yeah. You remember James McDonald, the Kiwi jockey who is one of the best jockeys in the world, comes over from Australia, wins on her pattern of like 50 metres to go. She just killed them.
Yes.
Yeah, so she won last year. Anyway, she goes to Australia and just kind of like, she's going all right, but just not as good as they know that she can be, which is really confusing. So she's a bit of a risk because she's come back. They've given her one run. She's better second up, so into that second run. But she's $2.45, so she's very short. And it's going to be interesting to see, does the market pile on and take the $2.45, or do they go, you know what, like she's not going quite as good as what we thought that she was, and they stay off her. But trainer is pretty confident that she'll go all right.
Yep.
But yeah, looking pretty
By
short.
far and away the favourite, yeah. $2.45, then you got Bourbon Empress at $4. Then you're almost immediately into your 20s, 30s, 40s.
Yeah, it's crazy, yeah.
So would that be like would you be out of your mind to go for like a top 3? There seems to be quite a clear top 3 there.
Yeah, you could have a trifecta, or even you might, go that they both get rolled. A couple that I don't mind at odds. One's Frost Fear. That's paying 11s and $3.10. I think that's a great top 4 bet, Frost Fear. Now, there hasn't been much money for it, but that's all right. It's drawn out in barrier 14. Probably won't matter for a horse like that. It'll tuck in, and the trip shouldn't be too bad.
Yeah.
Otherwise, further up the book, but it's drawn out as well, horse called Pericles.
Yep.
Now, this horse has won at Ellerslie before, and 26 and $5.50. If you really like something rough, like that's the sort of horse that could pop up and you go, oh, like how do we miss that?
Yeah.
So it's a wide open race, this one. If the favourite performs no good, but it's a sort of race that afterwards, Orchestral wins by 2 lengths and everyone goes like, oh, how did you not back that? It was so easy.
Yeah, I know. Or it's one of those ones where you sit there and you pour over the field for half an hour, you make a pick, something else wins that was just as rough as what you picked. You're like, I was looking at that too. I was looking at it.
Yeah.
Everyone would love to cast their bets in hindsight.
Oh, especially me.
Yeah, in fact, no one, arguably no one more. So, as you know, we've got our own TAB account. Now, we've got a couple of issues with our TAB account at the ACC. And the main one is that ACC head G Lane has the password to it.
That's not good.
And so the idea is the TAB give us bets, and we place them on everything that we commentate, and then it's just a way for us to punt along and people to listen along, try and dish out a couple of tips here and there. The problem is G Lane's taken to punting on like dogs in Tokyo at 3 a.m. and that kind of thing. All the stuff that they talk about when they say gamble responsibly. He's doing all of the irresponsible stuff. Now, miraculously over the summer, he hit like a 13-league multi and won the ACC TAB $5,000 off of that.
Outstanding. In Tokyo.
Yeah. And it's like there was ping pong involved. There was esports. Yeah. And yes, it is great. He's, pretty proud of himself now because he's hit this 13-leaguer, but a broke clock's right twice a day. That's not... So... We need to get this money away from Lane. We need to get it out of the account before it gets spanked on something ridiculous. So we are going to chuck that in the pot as well. The ACC is going to chuck $5,000 in the pot.
Oh, no pressure.
Nah.
How good.
Genuinely no pressure, because we'd rather you were in charge of it and we got to watch along on Saturday than having to wake up on Sunday morning and find out he put it on badminton or something.
Oh, well, outstanding. No, that's good. That'll probably take us past the $150,000 pot mark. We've still a couple of days to go, so it'll start to snowball from here. So hopefully we can do you proud and we don't cop it on the air from G Lane.
No, he doesn't know about this. And he won't.
Even better.
And he won't know until he listens to this podcast, which he probably won't do. So go well this weekend, mate. And so if people want to join along, they can jump on the app, go through the thing. Otherwise... I presume you're on all social medias if people want to check in that way.
Yeah, we seem to be shadow banned on TikTok, so don't look for us over there. They don't like any of our content. It just keeps getting taken down.
Winning too much.
Yeah. I think they're not too keen on the gambling side of things. But anyway, Instagram, Facebook. We've got a Facebook group. It's really helpful and supportive. We've got a BGP app if you want to download that. We're going to be doing like voice updates throughout the day of some of the bets and stuff that we're doing. So, yeah, it should be pretty hard to miss us.
Yes, brilliant. All right, thanks very much, Luke from BGP. Go well this weekend. Enjoy it.
Thanks, mate. Appreciate it.
You've been listening to the ACC's Agenda podcast, brought to you by Export Ultra. For more episodes, like and follow on iHeartradio or wherever you get your podcasts.